We've all seen the movies, right? The story of the Exodus is epic. You've got the plagues, the parting of the sea. I mean, it is major blockbuster stuff. But what if the real story, the one with the deepest meaning, isn't about all that spectacle? You know, tucked away behind those incredible moments are these profound ideas about community, faith, and memory. So today, let's peel back the curtain on the special effects and find out what's really going on in the story. So let me just start with a question. When you picture that huge crowd of people leaving Egypt, what do you see? You're probably thinking of one single unified group of Israelites, right? Well, what if I told you the ancient text itself paints a much more complex and, frankly, a way more interesting picture? So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to look at who was actually in that crowd. We'll explore why remembering became so important to their identity. And we'll try to figure out why on earth they took that strange, winding path out of Egypt. Then we'll get to the big climax at the sea, and finally, see what their journey tells us about the very human, up and down cycle of belief. Okay, let's dive right in. First up, the unexpected Exodus. We need to frame this as more than just a cool story from the past, because it's really a foundational text loaded with ideas that can still challenge us today. This brings us to a huge question. Who exactly made up that massive group fleeing Egypt? This is where the story gets really fascinating, because the answer is definitely not as simple as just one family or one ethnic group. So let's get right to it. Who got a ticket out? Was this some exclusive club based on your bloodline, or was something else entirely going on? Well, the text itself gives us this amazing clue. It uses the phrase mixed multitude. That tells you right from the start that this group was diverse. Scholar Dr. John Oswalt points out this could have included other Semitic peoples in the area, or maybe even some Egyptians who, after witnessing 10 straight plagues, decided, you know what, I think I'm going to go with these guys. And this gets to the absolute core of the idea. The community being built wasn't an ethnic one. It was a community of faith. It had nothing to do with your ancestry. It was open to any foreigner who was willing to accept the obligations of the community. This was a radical idea. It meant that your belief, not your birth, is what made you one of the people. So you have this new, diverse community. But what holds them together? Well, it wasn't just defined by who could join, but by what they were all commanded to remember. Now, this contrast is just revolutionary. At the time, all their neighbors were performing rituals based on myths, these timeless stories of gods fighting chaos. But the Hebrews were told to do something totally different. Remember a specific historical event. Their rituals weren't about myth, they were about something God actually did in real time and space. History itself became the foundation of their faith. And these rituals were just brilliant teaching tools. Just imagine this cycle built right into family life. A kid asks that simple but powerful question, hey, why are we doing this? And bam, that question is the trigger to retell the entire story of their deliverance. It's how they embedded their history and their identity into the next generation. Okay, so they're out of Egypt, but now we get to one of the most confusing parts of the story, the path they took. I mean, on a map, it makes absolutely zero sense, but there was a very real purpose behind it. Just look at this. The easy way, the logical way, was just a straight shot up the coast, maybe an 11-day walk. But instead, they're led on this bizarre long detour right into the desert towards what looks like a total dead end at the sea. You just have to wonder, why? Well, it turns out this weird detour was incredibly strategic. First, it kept them away from a war they just weren't ready to fight. But more than that, it was deliberately setting the stage for an unforgettable, jaw-dropping display of God's power. And yeah, it was also the perfect trap, designed to bait Pharaoh into one last fight he was guaranteed to lose. And that final showdown brings us to the climax of the entire story, the moment of truth right there at the water's edge. And here's a cool little detail you might not know. The original Hebrew text doesn't say Red Sea. It actually says Yam Suf, which means Reed Sea. Many scholars, including Dr. Oswalt, think this was probably a series of marshy but deep lakes in the area. Now, that doesn't make it any less of a miracle. We're still talking about water that was maybe 25 to 30 feet deep, more than enough to swallow an entire army. So just imagine this scene. The entire Egyptian army is thundering down on you, and you're trapped against this huge body of water. The people freaked out. Their immediate reaction was just pure despair. It's like they completely forgot about the 10 plagues and just started crying that they'd been led out into the desert to die. But Moses, his reaction is the total opposite. He's the one guy who seems to have actually learned the lesson. He tells everyone, don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch. It's this incredible contrast between a people completely ruled by fear and a leader who's operating on pure faith. But let's just pause here for a second and think about the scale of this. If you take a traditional reading of the numbers, you're looking at a crowd of about 2.5 million people. I mean, that is just a staggering number to even think about. But was that number meant to be a literal head count? Dr. Oswalt suggests we might need to think about it differently. In ancient Hebrew, the word for thousand is almost identical to the word for troop. So was it 600,000 men or 600 military units? It's a question that reminds us that maybe the point isn't about precise census data, but about the powerful idea of a complete and total rescue. And this all brings us to our final theme. Because this roller coaster of faith that the Israelites were on, it's not just some ancient story. It is a deeply, deeply human one. I mean, you can just see the pattern here, and it's almost dizzying. They see these amazing signs, and they believe. But the second things get hard, like having to make bricks without straw, they start to doubt. The sea parts, and their faith is through the roof. But then they get thirsty in the desert, and they're right back to grumbling and fearing for their lives. Their belief seems totally tied to their immediate comfort. And that really is the final, challenging thought here. It is so easy for us to look back at this up and down cycle of belief and judge them, but it forces us to ask a really tough question about ourselves. How different are we really? Is our own sense of faith, our own conviction, way more dependent on our day-to-day circumstances than we'd like to admit?